In this screencast, we're going to talk about the organization of our skeletal muscles. Now, we're not going to talk about the different muscles that we have, but rather the organization within one single muscle. Connective tissue coverings are going to be very important as we talk about the muscles, and I'll show you why. So here's an overview of how skeletal muscles are organized. You can see here that skeletal muscles are organized as little bundles that come together to form a little bit of a bigger bundle, that come together to form an even bigger bundle, that all come together to form the muscle themselves. So if you look here, you have one big muscle and there's connective tissue around it. Within this one big muscle, you have lots of different fascicles. Within each fascicle, you have lots of different muscle fibers, which are muscle cells. Within each muscle fiber, you then have myofibrils. Within each myofibril, you then have filaments. And there are varying levels of connective tissue along the way, but this organization is going to be very important. Because of the connective tissue and because of the independent arrangement of these bundles, we're able to have the muscles separated into many different levels. This allows for parts of the muscle to act somewhat independently of other parts of the muscle. This is very important, and we'll talk about this eventually, but it's very important because let's say I'm contracting my biceps to lift something. Well, if I'm only lifting something very, very light, say a piece of paper or a clipboard, I don't need to recruit as many muscle fibers as if I were lifting some very, very heavy weight. And so because they're in different little bundles, the muscle fibers are able to contract separately from each other. The connective tissue fibers also contain blood vessels and nerves. Blood vessels and nerves are very important for the muscle. The nerve is what ends up sending the signal that allows or causes a muscle to contract. Blood vessels provide lots and lots of nutrients to the muscles, things we need like oxygen and energy in the form of glucose. So let's start looking at the different connective tissue coverings, and in doing so, we'll also talk about the different bundles of muscles within muscles. So the first thing we have are fascia and tendons. Tendons are what actually attach the muscle to the bone. Tendons are a thickening of this connective tissue fascia, and it's just the end of it. So the fascia itself is a thin connective tissue membrane that covers the surface of the whole muscle and is going to separate individual muscles from other muscles. So each muscle is kind of saran wrapped, for lack of a better explanation, and the ends of this saran wrap fascia are tendons. These tendons will attach this muscle to the bone. Next, we have the epimysium. The epimysium is a connective tissue, again, that closely surrounds each muscle. So it's kind of like if you wrap something in saran wrap and then again in foil on top of that. There are two layers of connective tissue that go completely around the muscle. Then you have the perimysium. So within your big muscle, you have smaller bundles called fascicles. Around each fascicle, you're going to have the perimysium. This is going to separate the different fascicles within the muscle. So here you see the whole muscle. This is one fascicle. There's another one, another one, another one, another one, another one, another one, another one. So it looks like we have 8 total fascicles being shown in this diagram. They're all wrapped together in the epimysium, which is then all wrapped together in the fascia. Next, we have the endomysium. The endomysium is going to separate individual muscle fibers within each fascicle. So again, you had the muscle. The muscle itself is wrapped in the epimysium and then the fascia. Within the muscle, you have fascicles. So these little fascicle bundles are each wrapped in a perimysium. And then within the fascicles, you can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 muscle fibers, which are, it's just another name for muscle cells. So muscle cells, as we'll talk about in a different screencast, are very long and tubular. They're very different to maybe how we think of other cells, but muscle fibers are muscle cells. So again, you have these right here, these individual muscle fibers are each wrapped in an endomysium. Then you put all the muscle fibers together and you wrap them and you have a fascicle. Then you take all the fascicles, you wrap them together, and all the fascicles together form a muscle. Again, this is very important because it allows the muscle fibers to act somewhat independently of the other muscle fibers in the same muscle.